Meet Reed Lance Rosenthal, rancher, #1 best-selling award-winning author, and unabashedly, unapologetically on the right side of the outstanding issues of our generation. But don't try to fence him in. Sometimes his positions will surprise you, because Reed is definitely his own man, with his own opinions. You might love him, you might hate him, but you won't be able to stop listening. Step over to the right side with Reed.
Howdy, listeners and viewers from coast to coast, the Gulf to Canada, and around the globe. I hope you had a chance to see our video that we just put up. I mean, it was just hours ago. And it's 5 days of research. I spent 5 days. Our typical show, that is both the video and the radio on AM across the country, is a good, solid, and I'm talking about 24-hour day or day and a half. We spent 5 days doing the research on this attempt on Trump. And in the show before this, I've brought you a host of information. I mean, a host of information, much of it disjointed and in various corners of the universe, the universe of the internet. And we put it together for you in a web page so that you could read these articles and watch these videos for yourself. It's organized, it's easy to read. I really suggest you look at this information. It's from more than 45 different sources: left, right, mainstream media, alternate media, Secret Service agents, former Secret Service agents, military snipers, Canadians, Americans. I'm telling you, if you want to get an idea of what really the rest of the story of what transpired in Pennsylvania a week ago, then I suggest that you hit that website, ontherightsideradio.com. Upper right will be the link. It's the Trump attempt, or the attempt on Trump, and it's all organized. All these articles, videos, etc., are organized into motivation, supposed shooter information, personal protection, former Secret Service and forensics experts, Secret Service director and DHS, local police, security breaches and supposed shooter locations, New York Times bullet photo, very important. And the last one is, this is just the beginning. A desperate deep state and globalists will stop at nothing. And now they really will stop at nothing. Now they are really exposed and out in the open. So let me tell you what this little update is, okay? By the way, we're adding, to go along with the title of this show, to kind of tell you where we've conclusively arrived at, where we have absolutely, I was 90% sure when we did the first show, and I made certain that I told you. I wasn't 100% certain, but it was my opinion. But it's no longer opinion. This was a setup. It was an inside job. It was intentional on many different levels and many different tangents, with lots of moving pieces, very well planned, and it is a repeat. They took out the playbook of the JFK assassination in 1963. The building on which the shooter was is the red herring of the book depository back then. Lee Harvey Oswald is the patsy, just like this shooter, this 20-year-old shooter, is the patsy. None of this is real. This is all the matrix. This is what they want you to believe. The one thing they forgot is that this is not 1963. There's a pile of people with cell phones. There's a pile of people with cameras. Communication is instantaneous. And there's a lot of information and a lot of ability of specialized people to do all sorts of forensics research without ever visiting the site, like on the audible and the visual and the bullet trajectories and all sorts of things. They forgot about that. And now they're caught. And if you think they were desperate before, when they knew they had committed crimes, felonies, and treasons, and they knew that we knew, now they're really desperate, because they know that we know what they did or tried to do in this case, and unfortunately will try to do again. That's our last section, right? This is just the beginning, a desperate deep state. The section that we've added is very simply the plot, and the cover-up, because that is the stage that we are in now. The smoke is clearing, the dust is settling, the information's coming out despite the stonewalling by the government, by Wray, by Cheadle from the Secret Service, by Mayorkas, by Obama, by the Democrats, and I can go on down the list. All right, so I want to keep this brief. Go to our website that we have set up for this, on the rightsideradio.com, upper right-hand corner, click on the link, the attempt on Trump, and you read and listen and watch to your heart's content. We'll see if you come away with the same conclusions. Let me know in the comments section. Let me know by email on the rightsideradio@reagan.com, on the rightsideradio@reagan.com. We'll use this as a supplement to next week's radio show, by the way, you radio listeners who are also viewers. And YouTube, worthless, okay? YouTube is an arm of Google. Google is an arm of the government. The government is an arm of the globalists. And they've been spreading rumors for years that it costs you money to enroll in these other platforms like Rumble, who's terrific, no censorship. It costs you not a dime, folks. I suggest you watch all our stuff on Rumble, okay? Rumble. Or one of the other platforms that we're on a bunch. Now, let's get started, shall we? Wet my little fingers so I can move papers around here as everything falls apart. All right. Let's talk about crime, right? I brought you in the video just hours ago and in the radio show this week the history of assassinations and attempted assassinations in the United States of U.S. presidents. Fascinating. And then I brought you a rat-a-tat-tat of all the facts and then all the conjecture. I labeled each as it was on what we knew at that time. Remember, we started recording that in the middle of the research with information popping up literally by the hour on Tuesday night, and continued until we were done and were able to do the radio show, which got posted this morning on AM stations, and you listen to it at various times around the country, those of you that do. You can listen to it on podcast, and you can see the videos, one of those being this one. But this one is labeled for a reason, the plot and the cover-up, part 1, because there'll be many more parts to come. Unfortunately, we are dealing with corruption, we are dealing with treason. And it is what it is. I mean, just get with the program. Be real. Eat that red pill. Understand the matrix. So let's start off. Crime. Okay, crime is a function of the means to commit a crime, the motive to commit a crime, and the opportunity to commit a crime. As I go through this update, and as you go through the previous show just hours ago, which is far longer, far more extensive, I think you will see that all three were ample in this case. And by the way, were intentionally made ample in this case to cover the CYA of those really responsible at the top. There's a multiple layer of patsies going on here. You have this 20-year-old kid who is the patsy shooter, just as Oswald was back in the JFK deal. You have whoever took him out, and I'm not sure it's one of the sniper teams. I think it was, should we say, part of the plot? You know, the bullet in the back of the head when the sniper teams were out in front of him. It's all highly suspicious. There are diagrams in many of these articles showing the different layouts of other buildings which are outside the 150-yard perimeter, outrageous, that the Secret Service had established, yeah. And the patsy is Cheadle. She's the patsy for Mayorkas. And I think I have nothing to base this on other than gut and following these people for years, Obama. Obama and Mayorkas are thick as thieves, which, by the way, is what they are. So Mayorkas, for sure, the head of DHS, he is Cheadle's boss. And As I told you last week, Cheeto was appointed by Mayorkas after insistence by Jill Biden because Cheeto had been on Jill Biden's Secret Service team and they had become friends. So, Cheeto is not impressive, shall we say, in her discourse, in her rapid fire answers, rapid fire, I'm using that in quotes, rapid fire answers to questions. And she contradicts herself, as I'll give you some examples in here in the next few minutes. So you have multiple layers of patsies. This indicates a really well thought out plan, right? Deniable culpability. And you have a bunch of inexperienced, ill equipped, ill prepared, and potentially intentionally incompetent Secret Service folks out there. I don't mean the folks that rush the stage, other than those two gals who were not Secret Service agents. I'm talking about the higher ups. And there may be another patsy here. Cheeto may have a patsy below her, whoever the incident commander was at the Trump rally. All this stuff will be coming out, despite they're trying to slow walk it. The stonewalling has begun by Ray, by Mayorkas, by Cheeto, it is the Obama administration, the Biden administration, etc. So get prepared for that as people throw each other under the bus, because this is a big deal. I mean, this is really a big deal. This is a deal that's even bigger than election fraud, and election fraud is, in my mind, almost the very top of the heap of treason. So, one of the interesting things that's going on here, have you noticed the strident calls by Democrats for Joe to step down since the assassination attempt failed? You think that's a coincidence, folks? You don't think that any of the top Democrats, who are all associated with Mayorkas and Cheeto and the rest of the bureaucratic deep state, you don't think any of them knew this was going to come down? We'll talk more about this next week. I have some videos I'm going to share with you, not in this show, but in the next. And, now the Joe thing, which was a fraud on the American people in 2020 in all sorts of ways, the Joe thing is backfiring because feeble old Joe won't go. Well, kind of interesting, isn't it? How the worm turns on evil. All right, so I told you in the last show, hours ago, about this outfit out of Austin, a hedge fund with BlackRock ties. I told you about BlackRock filming at the high school of the shooter being featured prominently in the BlackRock video. And this hedge fund took out puts on 12 million shares at $36.40 roughly per share. Add that up, billions. Of course, they would have been rewarded very handsomely had Trump not made it. Because the puts, in other words, the short selling, was all against Trump's stocks. And it was done the day before the assassination attempt. But wait. The rest of the story, it gets better. If you remember, the SEC refused to approve Bitcoin and crypto ETFs for a host of people, right? And then along came BlackRock, what was it, 6, 8, whatever months ago? And lo and behold, the SEC caved and said, okay, well, now you can have ETFs. Because BlackRock, folks, pulls the strings of government along with other big corporate mega folks. It is fascism, as Mussolini defined it, the marriage of corporate and state. Well, think about the power that BlackRock has at the SEC to get a long denied for many applicants ETF approved for cryptos. And they're about to get another one approved, by the way. Well, now it seems that because I did the research myself on this, and there's a couple other sites that picked up on it too, good for them. So you have to file a form with the SEC when you when you do a transaction that big and you're playing with other people's money, shareholders' money. And it's called an IO form. I'm not going to bore you with all the details. That form was filed. It was a record, 12 million shares, 1 point whatever billion dollars. And guess what? As of today, when the reports started coming out, including ours, all of a sudden, the filing has been changed by the SEC. Now it's not 12 million shares, it's 1,200 shares. Really? A multi-billion-dollar hedge fund out of Austin, Texas is going to go to the trouble of making a 1,200 share trade? I want you to think about that just for a little bit. A 1,200 share trade, right? I mean, what are we talking? 20 grand? I mean, that's an hour of the CEO's time. This is preposterous. So that cover-up is already going on, which starts to link BlackRock even more into the cabal that set up this plot. And it was a plot. I am 99.99999% sure it was a plot. I was 90% sure at the time I did the video that was posted a few hours ago. Let me keep going. BlackRock, as you know, has about $12 trillion investments in various companies around the world, particularly U.S. companies. Trump has said unequivocally he's going to end all the wars, and we're going to mind our own business and do America first. Well, BlackRock happens to be invested in Raytheon and Boeing and Lockheed. You know, the companies that make the instruments of war. Trillions of dollars are on the table. Never mind the power and control, folks. You think there's motive? Yeah, there's probably motive. Yeah. And of course, the Democrats want to win the election and maintain control. You think there's motive? Oh, yeah. And many of the Dems, including their useful idiots at the much lower levels, hate Trump. Hate is always a motive. Or they fear Trump, and fear is always a motive. Okay, so we've now established, and I've just scratched the tip of the iceberg, motive, okay? Now, by the way, I'm going to add one other thing to motive. 3 weeks ago, Klaus Schwab, our buddy, you own nothing and you will be happy, at the WEF said, we need to make people knuckle under to our globalism ideals and our Agenda 2030. That almost exact words. And a week ago, he said, if Trump is elected, it will be the end of globalism. Well, good. I'm glad to hear the good news. But think about it from their perspective. Yes, motive. And then, of course, add the motive of the fact they know that they are traitorous criminals. They know we know, and they know that if Trump gets into office, despite all his soft talk right now, there's probably going to be some prosecutions and the outcomes will be ugly. They'd like to avoid that. And if they have to commit more crimes to do it, including murder and assassination and treason, they will. And they will continue to try. All right. So I told you a little bit about in the last video, I happen to have some pretty good radio equipment here. I mean, it's really not bad at all. And I was able to separate out the gunfire sounds, and I'm familiar with many different calibers of long-range weapons. And there were at least 3 different rifles. At least 3 different rifles. I don't have really sophisticated equipment. I can't graph it out because I'm a technical dinosaur for you. But Natural News, Natural Science did. And they did a phenomenal job. And we have that under this new heading, the plot and the cover-up. I mean, they have it nailed. You can watch it right on the screen. All the decibels, the sounds of the bullets, the sounds of the reports of the different rifles, the different audible levels. It's phenomenal. And it also tells us that different shots were fired from different distances. So you have different rifles at different distances. Well, my. That goes back to our hypothesis that there was more than one shooter. There may have, in fact, been 3, but we'll get into that at a later date as more comes out. I urge you to watch that video of their tests on the audible and their graphing of it. Right, you can see it's great. It's terrific. Beyond our capabilities, even though we discovered it. And I'm sure others did too, to give everybody credit. Okay, so you have the audio forensics, which has come out literally, since we completed the video that's that just came out a few hours ago, and the radio show, I might add. Now we have other people who have done some drone studies. And I brought to your attention outside the perimeter of the 150 yards, I mean, gag me, which this building that the Patsy shooter, the 20-year-old, was on. You have a water tower, and there's also come to light that there is a gymnasium 483 yards away. An easy shot for somebody who knows what they're doing. And shots seem to have come, as verified by the audio studies, the audio forensics, and by witnesses now that have come forward from one of those two locations or both. Both of them are lined up. I told you in the first video that the kid was shot in the back of the head. The sniper teams were out in front. In fact, one of the mistakes, shall we say, that Cheadle made in her discussions of this, which have now been corked by Mayorkas. I mean, you say another word, you get fired, blah, 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 that whole coercion thing. She talked about which sniper team took him out. Well, the sniper team she said took him out, which she proudly said was Secret Service, a tree blocks their line of fire from the roof they were on to the building that the Patsy shooter was on. You know, I'm a pretty good shot, but you can't see and you can't shoot through trees, usually. So there goes that little theme. She then said that she didn't send agents up on the roof of the, we'll call it the Pennsylvania Book Depository, the Red Herring building, that you take your attention off where things are really at, because the roof was too steep and too slippery. Well, it turns out that roof is about a 312 pitch, maybe a 2.5 12 pitch. Anybody who knows what I'm talking about, that is virtually nothing. It's close to flat. Her own snipers right behind Trump are on a 412, maybe even a 512 roof. So it was okay for them to be up on that 512 metal roof, but it wasn't okay to have somebody stationed on the roof 150 yards out to Trump's front and right, okay? Then she says, oh, well, you know, the local police were using that building as headquarters. And they were looking out the second-story windows. That's where they were stationed. Well, you know what, folks? And you'll see it in the videos. The building, the Patsy building, the book depository building in Pennsylvania, right? The Red Herring building. It's one level. It doesn't have second-story windows. But the building right behind it and virtually adjacent, which is where they really were, does have second-story windows. And the view from those windows, I want you to listen to this. You'll see it in the video, okay? Which we didn't do. Somebody else with far more skills than we have put it together. Looks right down. I'm talking about 50 to 100 feet away on that roof where that shooter was perched, taking aim and getting off some shots. And he wasn't taken out. The timeline. The FBI is now screwing with the timeline of what happened. And Director Wray has suddenly gone silent after vowing to cooperate. Must be coincidence. I mean, who would have thought that could possibly happen? Maybe he's working on his next set of FISA warrants. In any event, at least, depending upon whose timeline you want to watch, this kid was on the roof with a rifle under observation for 17 minutes before he shot. And everybody's asking, well, why didn't you take him out? Why didn't you take him? Folks, if you took him out, then the other shooters could not have shot. They could not have gone forward with the plan, making him the patsy. Do you understand? He had to shoot for them to shoot because the focus had to be on him. He had to be the patsy. He had to be, as DHS and Secret Service and FBI says, the lone gunman. You know, like Lee Harvey Oswald was a lone gunman back there in JFK time. So they had to wait. And of course, This poor kid is up there going after the president of the United States. He hasn't even shot a deer. He's not a hunter. He knows the cops have seen him. He knows the snipers are out there. He's already scoped them with his rangefinder. Oh yes, they had him on. They had him on camera. They had pictures of him. I think it was 1 hour and 40 minutes. 1 hour and then 40 minutes again. Secret Service taking pictures of him, scoping them out with a rangefinder. You don't bring a rangefinder unless you plan to, shall we say, range a target. But that's why he wasn't taken out. It would have screwed up the plan. And that's why he was shot in the back of the head, because you'll see in the videos that these people have beautifully laid out. Both the water tower and the gym, which, by the way, is closed on Saturdays, how convenient, is right behind him, and he is lined up literally between them and Trump. What an easy pick to make sure there's no patsy witness. Kind of like, Jack Ruby offing Lee Harvey Oswald the day after he was apprehended. Right. In a police station, no doubt. Yeah, okay, whatever. You betcha. You better eat that red pill, or if you think that all occurred, you've been sucking on the blue pill. That's all I can tell you. All right, let's continue, okay? It seems that there's now reports of a shooter or evidence of a shooter in the water tower, which was, 350 or so yards. The gym was 483 yards. All these yardages, by the way, stack up perfectly with the audio forensics that natural science has done. I mean, watch the video, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. They've done a phenomenal job. Phenomenal job. And there seems that there was, I don't have any evidence of this. This is the same people who did that video. There's evidence of a zip line from the water tower to a patch of woods, literally at its base. And there's also reports of a Department of Agriculture vehicle hidden and parked in those woods. Okay, I can't verify this. This is conjecture. I'm trying to make sure you get conjecture and you get facts. So far, I've given you facts. That little piece is conjecture. Although it makes sense, particularly for a sophisticated scam operation by really powerful and high-ranking people, full of venom and treason and fear, like this was. All right. Untrained agents. Now, I didn't bring this to you in the last video because I didn't have confirmation. Now I have confirmation. I had heard through various sources that a portion of Trump's primary team, the team that rushed the stage and did a pretty good job, other than the gals, other than two of the gals did a terrible job. One gal did a good job, but when you're 5'6", you can't cover a 6'6" man, and you sure as hell couldn't move him if you had to. So much for DEI, Miss Cheadle and Mr. Mayorkas, and Mr. Biden and Mr. Obama. So there were agents on here, not only the two DEA agents, which I identified for you, which came from Steal the Vote, Josh Shapiro, the governor, the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania, never been on personal protection detail. But it seems that some of the extra help, which Mayorkas has been crowing about finally sending after weeks and weeks and weeks of requests, well, they weren't Secret Service people trained in personal protection. They were HSI people, which stands for Homeland Security Investigations. They don't have a clue as to personal protection. So there was purposely a detail. Oh, and some of his primary people apparently were given the weekend off because they had worked 7 days. Wow, what a lot of coincidences. And as I said in the first video, as I say all the time, I don't believe in coincidences. They made sure that there was the B team out there. Never mind there were some A actors in it, like the guys who were up there on the stage. They made sure it was the B team, right? Deniable culpability. They created the situation, right? The means to pull this off, except by an act of fate, an act of God, who knows what. They didn't. That's exactly what they did. And they modeled it on the JFK assassination. I told you I was leaning that direction the last video and on the radio show. I am now 99.9% there. They just forgot about all the modern communications, electronics, videos, etc., etc. Oh well, you know. So you have untrained agents. You're understaffed, we now come to find out. The sniper teams is very foggy bottom on the sniper teams. Was there one or two Secret Service teams? The local manager of Butler County says that his people reported the threat an hour before on the tactical comms channel, which everybody, including Secret Service, who's in charge of the security detail, has. And then they reported it again. And then they reported it a third time when the one cop scaled the roof, the kid pointed the gun, and he fell back, by the way, hurt himself. And it also seems that there was a cop who drew his gun and was shooting at the kid, maybe rattled him a little bit. Which brings me to the next point. You'll see in the audio forensics very clearly that he only fired 3 shots, the first 3 shots. Remember, they had to wait for him to shoot for this whole plan, red herring, patsy, divert your attention somewhere else to work. They had to let him shoot first, period. There were 3 bullets that went by Trump's head. Literally, we're talking about millimeters from his head. There's one shell, and I think we have this video under the new stuff that we have just posted also, the plot and the cover-up. One bullet, the very first one, is when he turned his head and it took off his ear. Level, by the way, not at an angle like if you were shooting from a high point. And I brought that up in the last video also. The second came so quickly that it came between his hand and his ear before his hand reached his ear. In other words, the bullet went like that, like between my hand and my ear. And the third one was a little bit further off because stuff was happening by then, okay? So that's 3 shots from rifle number 2. Think about the fact that this kid got off 3 shots, and how many bystanders were killed or wounded tragically? 3. Think about this kid nervous as a cat, full of adrenaline, scared to death, the rifle barrel shaking like this. I mean, I know what I'm talking about on this stuff. On a slippery roof, he's lying down, his cloth shirt, cotton t-shirt against a metal roof, even though it didn't have a whole lot of slope. Knows he's like the center of attention in the world, that there's rifles chained on him. You don't think there was any adrenaline going? Those 3 shots of his are what got the bystanders. That's how far off target he was. It was the pros that were hired for this escapade that almost hit the mark and that took out the patsy shooter, the kid. I'm convinced of it. You'd be hearing a lot more about this sniper that took him out if the sniper was a government sniper. It definitely wasn't the local snipers, or he would have heard from the manager. And he's made it very clear that they told the Secret Service many times, a number of times, starting an hour before Trump even arrived there. And yet the Secret Service, his personal detail, didn't know anything about it. His campaign staff was never notified. That's why they let him go out on the stage. That's why they didn't hustle him off the stage when literally, for at least the first 6 minutes that he was talking, the shots happened at 6:11 of his speech. The first 6 minutes that he was talking, this kid is on the roof under observation, apparently, according to Miss Cheadle, by Secret Service snipers in the second story of the building, like 100 feet from this kid. Literally, watch the video. Listen to what she said. Don't listen to me. I'm just your hayseed in Wyoming, you know. I'm just deducing things, shall we say. And then And then we have no aerial surveillance. The Secret Service, unbelievably, didn't have a single drone there. You know, drones, folks, even a rudimentary surveillance drone would be critical to an event like this. It obviously would have spotted the kid and everything going on at the water tower and maybe at the gymnasium roof and wherever else things were happening, which, you know, it's like a $3,000 item, and that's a pretty damn good drone. I mean, if you want to spend what the federal government spends, you could probably have a drone that would, tell you how many buttons you have on your shirt. But there wasn't any there, even though it's standard protocol. I wonder why that is. And then there seems to be some confusion about the tactical comms central communications system, who was tapped into it and who wasn't. Oh, more deniable culpability. My radio wasn't working. I didn't know that was the comms channel. Whatever. That hasn't been said yet. I'm just throwing it out there. So there were no canines. Virtually at all these types of events, personal security, you have a canine dog. He can smell things. He can smell explosives. He's kept right around the stage to make sure nobody is, shall we say, playing games close in to the person, the VIP being protected. There was no canines, even though it's pretty much standard procedure. Wonder why that is. It also makes you wonder about what was going on close to the stage, that maybe when things weren't going right, when it was apparent Trump had been hurt but not killed, somebody kind of, shall we say, reined it in closer into the target. Who knows? We'll find out. There's a really interesting gal in one of these videos right behind Trump, black hair, absolutely unperturbed, almost like she knew it was coming. In fact, a few seconds before the shots, about 10 seconds, she actually hunches down just a little bit, keeps her eyes focused, and then the shots come, and everybody around her jumps, right? And ducks. She doesn't do anything. She's absolutely still. And then she takes out her cell phone and starts to video. I find this really odd. I'd like to know more about her. I'd like to know a lot more about her, actually. All right, so Homeland Security has started their investigation, folks. And Congress, they've hopped right on this. They have their first hearings, and Cheadle's under oath on Monday. We'll see if she shows up. And we'll see what kind of rat-a-tat-tat of dance, evade we get. But the cover-up has begun, okay? The plot has been exposed, and the cover-up has begun. Stay tuned for the next update. In the meantime, keep the wind at your back, fellow Americans. An important time to do so. Read Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio and the Cowboys Take on Video.
Please remember, if you've missed any shows, just click on Show Archive and you'll find all of his shows. We look forward to seeing you here again next week for another episode of Read Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side.